If I'd known what was coming that Tuesday morning, I would have gift-wrapped poison ivy and called it a day. Instead, I sat in my kitchen, drinking coffee that tasted like disappointment, watching my wife Jessa perfect her mask of domestic bliss. "Anniversary dinner tonight," she said, not looking up from her phone. I made reservations at Romano's. 22 years of marriage, and she still thought I was stupid enough to believe her lies. The reservation wasn't for us. I'd already checked. It was for her and Brett Garis, her boss at Henderson and Associates, the law firm where she'd been climbing ladders that had nothing to do with legal briefs. "Sounds perfect," I said, stirring my coffee. "I have a gift for you." That got her attention. Jessa's head snapped up, her green eyes calculating. She was still beautiful at 39, all sharp angles and careful maintenance, but I could see the rot underneath now. Amazing what clarity comes when you stop lying to yourself. "Really? What kind of gift?" Her voice carried that fake sweetness she used on clients and lovers. "Surprise," I said. "You'll have to wait. My name is Nick Grady. I'm a civil engineer, which means I build things that last. Bridges, foundations, structures that can weather storms. I should have applied those same principles to my marriage, but hindsight is 20/20, and foresight is apparently 20 blind. Jessa went back to her phone, fingers dancing across the screen. I knew she was texting him. Brett Pumper Garis, though nobody called him that to his face anymore. The nickname came from college, something about his stamina, though judging by the complaints I'd overheard from her friends, it didn't apply to all areas of his life. "Working late again tonight?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Probably. Big case coming up." She didn't even bother to make it sound convincing. The big case was me, apparently. How to extract maximum assets while minimizing personal consequences. Jessa had always been thorough in her research. I finished my coffee and grabbed my keys. "See you at dinner, then." "Nick?" She looked up, and for a moment I saw something that might have been genuine concern. "Are you okay? You've been different lately." Different, like I'd grown a spine and developed peripheral vision. "Just tired," I said. "Work stress." She nodded, already dismissing me. "Maybe take some vacation time. You've been pushing too hard." Pushing too hard. Right. While she'd been pushing Brett Garis into supply closets and conference rooms after hours. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. I drove to my office through the familiar streets of our suburban neighborhood. Maple trees lined the sidewalks, their leaves just starting to turn. October in Virginia was beautiful, all crisp air and golden light. It would have been romantic if my wife wasn't planning to divorce me and steal half my assets while riding her boss like a mechanical bull. Henderson and Associates occupied a glass tower downtown, all chrome and ambition. Jessa had been there 8 years, working her way up from junior associate to senior partner track. I'd been proud of her success, even when it meant longer hours and more business trips. Even when she started coming home with stories about Brett's brilliant strategies and innovative approaches. Brett Garis was 44, divorced, and balding in that way that screamed midlife crisis. He drove a red Corvette and wore cologne that could strip paint. He also had political connections and enough arrogance to think he was untouchable. He was about to learn otherwise. My phone buzzed with a text from Bob Martinez, my best friend since college. "Lunch today?" Got news. Bob worked in IT security, which made him useful for more than just friendship. He'd been helping me gather information for the past month, ever since I'd started suspecting Jessa's late nights weren't entirely professional. "Can't today," I texted back. "Big presentation tonight." "The thing we discussed?" "The thing." "Good luck, brother. She's got it coming." Bob was right. Jessa had it coming in ways she couldn't imagine. I spent the morning reviewing blueprints for a bridge project in Richmond. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was building something meant to last while my marriage crumbled like cheap concrete. But bridges were honest. They either held or they didn't. There was no deception in steel and stone. Around noon, I drove to the jewelry store. The clerk, a nervous young man with thick glasses, handed me a velvet box. "Are you sure about this, sir? It's quite unusual." "Positive," I said. Sometimes unusual is exactly what the situation calls for. The box looked perfect, elegant, expensive, the kind of thing that would make Jessa's eyes light up with greed before they dimmed with understanding. I'd had it custom-made, with a false bottom and hidden compartments. Engineering principles applied to emotional warfare. Back at the office, I made copies of everything. Bank statements, email printouts, photographs, wire transfer records. The paper trail was damning and complete. Jessa might be a lawyer, but I was an engineer. I believed in redundancy and backup systems. My assistant, Carol, knocked on my door around 3. "Your wife called. She wants to move dinner to 7:30. "Did she say why?" "Something about a client meeting running late." Of course. Brett probably needed extra time to rehearse his lies. 7:30 is fine, I said. Carol hesitated. "Nick, are you all right? You seem different?" "Focused. Like when you're working on a particularly challenging project." Carol had worked for me for 12 years. She knew my moods better than my wife did. "Something like that," I said. "Thanks for asking." The afternoon crawled by. I reviewed the evidence one more time, checking every detail. The email account Jessa had set up using my name and social security number, the client retainers she'd redirected to a private account, the hotel receipts charged to our joint credit card, the burner phone I'd found hidden in her car. She'd been sloppy, probably because she thought I was too trusting to investigate. Or maybe she wanted to get caught. Some people sabotage themselves when the guilt gets too heavy. At 6 o'clock, I drove home to change clothes. The house felt different now, like a stage set waiting for the final act. 22 years of shared memories, reduced to evidence and property division. Jessa was in the bedroom, applying makeup with surgical precision. She'd chosen a black dress that hugged her curves and probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Dressing for Brett, not for me. "You look nice," I said, meaning it. She was still beautiful, even if the beauty was all surface now. "Thank you." She studied herself in the mirror, adjusting her earrings. "What are you wearing?" I held up a navy suit, the one she'd bought me for our 15th anniversary. This seemed appropriate. "Perfect," she smiled at her reflection. "Tonight should be memorable." "Oh, it will be," I said. "Trust me on that." Romano's was crowded, filled with couples celebrating their own milestones. The hostess led us to a corner table, intimate and private. Jessa had chosen well, plenty of witnesses, but enough space for a quiet conversation. We ordered wine. Jessa chose an expensive Bordeaux, probably figuring it would be her last chance to spend my money on premium alcohol. I stuck with beer. I wanted a clear head for what was coming. "So," she said, raising her glass. 22 years. 22 years, I agreed. Amazing how time flies. "Any regrets?" The question hung between us like smoke. I could see the calculation in her eyes, the lawyer's instinct to probe for weakness. "Just one," I said. "I regret not paying closer attention." Something flickered across her face. "What do you mean?" "I mean I've been a terrible husband, trusting, naive, focused on work while you were building your career." I reached into my jacket pocket. "But I want to make up for that." Her eyes fixed on the velvet box as I placed it on the table. "Nick, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did." I slid it across the white tablecloth. "Open it." Jessa's fingers trembled slightly as she lifted the lid. For a moment, confusion replaced calculation in her expression. Then understanding dawned, and her face went pale. Inside the box, nestled where diamonds should have been, were divorce papers, tabbed with color-coded flags, organized by section, professional and thorough. "Read page 4, I said quietly. Her hands shook as she flipped through the pages. Page 4 detailed the conflict of interest clause she'd violated by routing firm clients through a private email alias registered in my name. It also listed the specific clients, dates, and amounts involved. "Nick, I can explain." "No need." I slid a second envelope across the table. "Wire transfer confirmations. Retainers redirected to an account I control as trustee. I closed it yesterday and issued reversal notices to all affected clients." Jessa's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, then at me. "It's my attorney." Better answer it. She accepted the call with trembling fingers. "Hello, David?" I couldn't hear his words, but I could see their effect. Jessa's face crumpled as she listened. "Yes, I understand," she whispered. "No, Yes, I'll be there tomorrow." She ended the call and stared at me. "You sent them everything. Audit trail, alias registration, client acknowledgements. The firm's compliance officer joined the call about 10 minutes ago. Your access has been suspended pending investigation." The waiter appeared with our appetizers. "Calamari for the lady, bruschetta for the gentleman. Can I get you anything else?" "We're fine," I said. "Thank you." Jessa tried to stand, but I placed the jewelry box back in front of her. "You need to sign the receipt of service. It's all legal and proper." "You can't do this to me." I already did. I handed her a pen. "Sign it, Jessa. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Her signature was barely legible, a scrawl of defeat and rage. Around us, other couples continued their celebrations, oblivious to the quiet destruction happening at our table. "How long have you known?" she asked. "About Brett? 3 months. About the money? 6 weeks. About the email alias? 2 weeks. I took a sip of beer. "You were sloppy, Jessa. Arrogant. You thought I was too stupid to notice. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "How was it supposed to happen? You and Brett run off together with my money and half my assets? Leave me with nothing while you start your new life?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. The waiter returned with our entrees. Jessa stared at her salmon like it might bite her. I cut into my steak, suddenly hungry for the first time in weeks. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you find somewhere else to live. Your clothes are packed and in the garage. I changed the locks this afternoon. You can't kick me out of my own house. Check the deed. It's in my name, purchased before we married. Virginia isn't a community property state." I smiled. "You should know that, being a lawyer and all." Her phone buzzed with a text, then another, and another. Word was spreading through her social circle like wildfire. In an hour, everyone would know. The firm, her friends, the neighbors. "Nick, please, we can work this out." "No, we can't." I signaled for the check. 22 years, Jessa. I gave you 22 years of loyalty and trust. You threw it away for a balding middle manager with political ambitions and a red sports car. The check arrived. I paid with cash, leaving a generous tip. The waiter had been professional despite the obvious tension. "One more thing," I said, standing. "Brett's wife knows. I sent her copies of everything this afternoon. She's filing for divorce tomorrow." Jessa's face crumpled completely. "You've ruined everything." "No," I said, putting on my jacket. "You did that all by yourself. I just documented it." I left her sitting there, surrounded by the wreckage of her carefully constructed lies. Through the restaurant window, I could see her crying into her phone, probably calling Brett. Good luck with that, I thought. Brett was about to have problems of his own. The next morning brought autumn rain and a dozen missed calls from Jessa. I ignored them all while drinking coffee and reading the newspaper like a civilized human being. The house felt different without her presence. Cleaner somehow, like I'd finally opened the windows and let out years of accumulated toxins. My phone buzzed with a text from Bob. "Holy hell, man. It's all over social media. Barb's group chat is going crazy." Barb Henderson was Jessa's closest friend. or so Jessa believed. In reality, Barb had been feeding me information for months. She'd never liked Brett, and had grown tired of watching Jessa destroy her marriage for a man who treated women like disposable accessories. I texted back, "Just getting started. What's next?" "Structural demolition." Bob understood. In engineering, you can't build something new until you've completely removed what came before. Half measures lead to catastrophic failure down the line. I drove to work through streets slick with rain. The city looked washed clean, all gray skies and golden leaves. My phone rang as I pulled into the parking garage. "Mr. Grady, this is Patricia Wells from Henderson and Associates. I need to speak with you about some financial irregularities involving your wife." Patricia was the firm's compliance officer, a sharp woman in her 50s who took ethical violations personally. I'd met her at several firm parties over the years. "I'm available anytime," I said. "Would this morning work?" "Actually, yes. Can you be here by 10? "I'll be there." Henderson and Associates occupied floors 12 through 18 of the Meridian building. The lobby was all marble and intimidation, designed to make clients feel like they were in the presence of legal gods. I'd always found it pretentious, but Jessa loved the status it represented. Patricia met me at the elevator, her expression grim. "Thank you for coming in, Nick. I know this must be difficult." "Not as difficult as you might think." She led me to a conference room where 2 other people waited, James Henderson, the founding partner, and someone I didn't recognize. "This is Detective Morrison from the Financial Crimes Unit," Patricia said. "The amounts involved require police notification." Detective Morrison was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with intelligent eyes and a firm handshake. "Mr. Grady, we appreciate your cooperation in this matter." "Happy to help," I said, "though I should mention that I've retained counsel." "That's your right, of course, but the evidence you provided suggests you're a victim here, not a perpetrator." James Henderson looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. The firm's reputation was everything, and Jessa had put it at risk. "Nick, I want you to know that we had no knowledge of these activities. If we had—" "I understand, James." Jessa was careful to hide her tracks. Not careful enough, apparently. Patricia opened a thick folder. The email alias, the redirected retainers, the unauthorized client communications. It's all here. We're terminating her employment immediately. "What about Brett?" I asked. The 3 of them exchanged glances. "Mr. Garis claims he had no knowledge of the financial irregularities," Detective Morrison said. "The personal relationship is a separate matter." "Is it?" I pulled out my own folder. "Because I have evidence suggesting otherwise." I'd saved the best for last. Email threads between Brett and Jessa discussing the Nick problem and how to maximize the extraction. Screenshots of text messages about hiding assets and manipulating the divorce timeline. Bank records showing Brett had co-signed on the redirected account. Patricia's face darkened as she reviewed the documents. "This changes things significantly." "Brett's in the building," James said quietly. "Should I call him in?" "Please do." While we waited, Detective Morrison asked me about the timeline, how I'd discovered the affair when I'd started investigating, what had led me to check the financial records. "I'm an engineer," I said. "When I see cracks in a foundation, I investigate the cause. Usually the damage is more extensive than it appears on the surface." Brett arrived 10 minutes later, his usual confidence replaced by nervous energy. He'd dressed carefully, expensive suit, perfect tie, cologne that announced his presence from across the room. But his eyes gave him away. He knew why he was here. "Brett," James said. "Sit down." "What's this about?" Brett's gaze flicked to me, then away. "And why is he here?" "Mr. Garis," Detective Morrison said, "we're investigating financial irregularities involving Jessa Grady. Your name has come up in connection with these activities." "I don't know anything about Jessa's financial dealings." Brett's voice was steady, but sweat beaded on his forehead. Our relationship was personal, not professional. I slid the email printouts across the table. These suggest otherwise. Brett's face went pale as he recognized his own words. The extraction plan, the asset hiding strategy, the timeline for manipulating the divorce proceedings. This is taken out of context, he said weakly. What context makes this acceptable? Patricia's voice could have frozen water. You conspired with an associate to defraud her husband and violate client confidentiality. Now wait a minute. No, you wait. James's voice carried the authority of 30 years in practice. You've compromised this firm's integrity and exposed us to criminal liability. You're suspended immediately pending investigation. Brett turned to me, desperation replacing arrogance. Nick, we can work this out, man to man. We are working it out, I said. Just not the way you planned. Detective Morrison stood. Mr. Garis, I need you to come with me. We have more questions. Am I under arrest? Not at this time, but I'd advise you to contact an attorney. After they left, the conference room felt larger, emptier. James rubbed his temples like he had a headache. 28 years I've been building this firm, he said. One bad decision can destroy everything. It's not your fault, James. You hired qualified people and trusted them to act ethically. Maybe, but trust is a luxury we can't afford anymore. He looked at me with something like respect. You handled this well, Nick. Methodically, professionally. I learned from the best. Jessa always said preparation was everything. Patricia laughed despite the circumstances. She's right about that. Unfortunately, she didn't prepare for you. I left the building feeling lighter than I had in months. The rain had stopped, and weak sunlight filtered through the clouds. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Jessa, and 3 voicemails I didn't bother to listen to. Instead, I called Bob. Phase 2 complete. How'd it go? Brett's suspended and under investigation. Jessa's fired. The firm is cooperating fully. Damn, Nick, you don't mess around. 22 years of marriage teaches you patience and thoroughness. What's next? Social demolition. Jessa's world wasn't just professional, it was social. The wine club, the book group, the charity committees, all those carefully cultivated relationships that fed her ego and supported her image. Time to introduce some reality into that bubble. I drove to Starbucks, where the coffee moms held court every Tuesday morning. Suburban mothers with too much time and money, gossiping over lattes and organic pastries. Jessa had infiltrated their group years ago, using them to build her social network. Barb Henderson sat at their usual table, surrounded by familiar faces. She spotted me through the window and waved me inside. Nick! She stood to hug me, playing her part perfectly. How are you holding up? The other women looked uncomfortable. They'd heard rumors but weren't sure what to believe. I sat down, accepting their offered sympathy with appropriate grace. It's been difficult, I said. 22 years of marriage, and I thought I knew her. We all did, said Monica, a real estate agent with perfect teeth and artificial sympathy. She seemed so devoted to you. That's what made it so shocking, Barb added. The financial stuff, I mean. Using your identity for that email account. The women leaned forward, hungry for details. I fed them carefully selected information. Nothing that would compromise the investigation, but enough to paint a clear picture of betrayal and deception. The worst part, I said, is knowing how long it was going on. The hotel receipts go back 8 months. 8 months? Monica's eyes widened. And you had no idea? I trusted her. Completely. I shook my head sadly. She said she was working late, building her career. I was proud of her success. What about Brett? Asked another woman whose name I couldn't remember. Did you know him well? I thought I did. He came to our house for dinner parties, firm events, shook my hand and smiled while he was planning to steal my wife and my money. The conversation continued for 20 minutes, each woman adding her own observations and theories. By the time I left, the story had grown and evolved, taking on a life of its own. Within hours, it would spread through every social circle in the county. My phone rang as I reached my car. Unknown number. "Hello?" "You bastard." Jessa's voice was raw with anger and exhaustion. "You've destroyed everything." "Where are you calling from?" "My mother's house, since you locked me out of my own home." "Your mother's house in Florida?" "Don't act surprised. You knew I'd have to come here." Actually, I hadn't known, but it worked perfectly. Jessa's mother, Dorothy, was a sharp woman who'd never quite approved of her daughter's choices. Having Jessa show up defeated and homeless would be its own punishment. "What do you want, Jessa?" "I want you to stop this insanity. Drop the charges, call off the investigation. We can work out a quiet divorce like civilized people." "Too late for that. You should have thought about civilization before you started stealing from me." "I never stole from you." The email alias was registered using my social security number. The redirected retainers went to an account you controlled. In legal terms, that's identity theft and fraud. Silence on the line. Then, "What do you want?" "I want you to face the consequences of your choices. All of them." "Nick, please. I made mistakes, but I don't deserve this." "You're right," I said. "You deserve worse. But I'm not a vindictive man, just thorough." I ended the call and drove home. The house felt peaceful in the afternoon light, all clean lines and honest spaces. I'd built it myself, every beam and joint designed to last. Unlike my marriage, it had solid foundations. That evening, I met Bob for dinner at Murphy's Pub, our usual spot for important conversations. He was already there when I arrived, nursing a beer and looking concerned. "You sure you want to keep pushing this?" he asked after I'd ordered. "Jessa's finished. Brett's finished. Maybe it's time to let it go." "Would you, if it was your wife?" Bob considered this. "Probably not. But I'm worried about you, man. This level of precision. It's not like you. Maybe this is exactly like me. Maybe I've just never had reason to show it before. Or maybe you're becoming someone you won't like when this is over." I thought about that while we ate. Was I becoming someone different? Or was I finally becoming who I really was, stripped of illusions and false trust? "She didn't just cheat on me, Bob. She tried to destroy me financially. She used my identity to commit crimes. She planned to leave me with nothing while she started a new life with my money." "I know, and she deserves consequences. I'm just saying, make sure the consequences don't destroy you too." It was good advice, but I wasn't ready to take it. Not yet. 3 weeks later, the full scope of Jessa's betrayal had become clear. The investigation revealed 6 months of systematic fraud, involving 12 clients and over $200,000 in misdirected retainers. Brett's involvement was undeniable. His fingerprints were on every aspect of the scheme. I sat in Detective Morrison's office, reviewing the final report. The charges were serious: identity theft, wire fraud, conspiracy, breach of fiduciary duty. Both Jessa and Brett were looking at potential felony convictions. "The district attorney wants to proceed with prosecution," Morrison said. "Your cooperation has been invaluable." "What about restitution?" "Full recovery of all funds, plus penalties and interest. The firm is also facing civil liability, but that's separate from the criminal case." I nodded. Justice was moving forward, slow but inexorable. But justice wasn't enough. Not after 22 years of marriage built on lies. My phone buzzed with a text from Barb. "Emergency coffee meeting. You need to see this." I found her at Starbucks, laptop open, face grim. "Sit down, Nick. This is bad." She turned the screen toward me. Social media posts, dozens of them, all painting me as the villain. According to Jessa's version of events, I was a controlling husband who'd driven her into another man's arms through emotional neglect and financial abuse. "She's claiming you set her up," Barb said, "that you knew about the affair and used it to frame her for crimes she didn't commit." I scrolled through the posts. Jessa had been busy, reaching out to old friends, distant relatives, anyone who might believe her version of events. Some of the responses were supportive, expressing outrage at my betrayal and praising her courage in speaking out. "Does anyone believe this?" I asked. "Some do. People who don't know you well, who only heard Jessa's side of the story." Barb closed the laptop. "She's trying to control the narrative, make herself the victim." It was a smart strategy, actually. Create enough doubt about my motives to muddy the waters, make people question whether the evidence was real or manufactured. Classic legal maneuvering. "What do you think I should do?" "Fight back. Tell your side of the story. Show people the evidence." I considered this. A public relations war would be messy, unpredictable. It would also give Jessa exactly what she wanted: attention and sympathy. "No," I said finally. "Let her talk. The truth has a way of surfacing." But privately, I was already planning my response. Not a social media campaign or public statements. Something more direct, more personal. That evening, I drove to Brett's neighborhood. He lived in a McMansion in an upscale subdivision, all fake columns and pretentious landscaping. His red Corvette sat in the driveway, as subtle as a neon sign. I didn't stop, just drove past, noting the details. Security cameras, motion sensors, the kind of elaborate system that screamed, "I have expensive things worth stealing." Brett had always been paranoid about his possessions. The next morning, I called in a favor from my construction crew. Tony Ricci had worked with me for 15 years, building bridges and office complexes across Virginia. He was also creative when it came to practical jokes. "You want me to do what?" Tony laughed. "Nick, that's crazy, even for you." "Not crazy, appropriate. The man tried to steal my wife and my money. Turnabout is fair play." "What if we get caught?" "We won't. And even if we did, what's the worst that happens? Vandalism charge? I can afford a good lawyer." Tony considered this. "When?" "Tonight. He's got a business dinner at the country club. Should be gone for hours." "You're sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." We met at midnight in the parking lot of a closed gas station. Tony had brought everything we needed: paint, brushes, stencils, and a portable generator for the power tools. We looked like a legitimate maintenance crew, which was exactly the point. Brett's house was dark, his Corvette gone. The security system was impressive, but not foolproof. Tony disabled the cameras while I worked on the motion sensors. 15 minutes later, we had free access to the property. What followed was 2 hours of therapeutic vandalism. We didn't damage anything permanently. That would have been criminal destruction of property. Instead, we redecorated. The fake columns got a fresh coat of hot pink paint. The pretentious fountain became a wading pool filled with rubber ducks. The manicured lawn sprouted dozens of plastic flamingos. The pièce de résistance was the message painted across his garage door in neon green letters: "Cheaters live here." We were gone by 3 a.m., leaving no evidence except our artistic improvements. Brett would wake up to find his suburban palace transformed into a carnival of humiliation. My phone rang at 7:30 the next morning. "You son of a—" Brett's voice was shaking with rage. "Good morning, Brett. How's the weather in your neighborhood? You think this is funny? Vandalizing my property?" "Vandalizing? I prefer redecorating. Did you like the flamingos? I thought they added a festive touch." "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead. I'm sure they'll be very interested in your complaint, especially when they see the security footage of you sneaking around with my wife." Brett fell silent. He'd forgotten about his own cameras, the ones that had captured months of clandestine meetings. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "I want you to understand something, Brett. You thought you could take everything from me and walk away clean. You were wrong. The police will catch you. There's evidence. What evidence? A few cans of washable paint? Some lawn ornaments? Even if they traced it back to me, what's the penalty? A fine? Community service? I laughed. Meanwhile, you're facing felony charges and a destroyed reputation. Tell me, which of us has more to lose? I ended the call and went to make coffee. Through my kitchen window, I could see the neighbor's dog playing in their backyard, chasing leaves in the morning sun. It was going to be a beautiful day. Bob called around noon. Please tell me you didn't do what I think you did. Depends what you think I did. Brett's house is all over social media. Pink columns, rubber ducks, flamingos everywhere. It looks like a theme park exploded. Sounds festive. Nick, this is escalating beyond reason. You've made your point. Maybe it's time to step back. I'm just getting started. That afternoon, I received a call from James Henderson. Nick, we need to talk. Can you come in? I found him in his office, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. The investigation had taken a toll on the entire firm. Sit down, he said. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind that involves Brett Garis and a very expensive lawyer. He's claiming harassment, intimidation, conspiracy to commit vandalism. He wants a restraining order. I wasn't surprised. Brett was desperate, grasping for any legal remedy that might protect him. Does he have a case? Not a strong one. But he doesn't need a strong case, just enough to make your life difficult. James leaned back in his chair. Nick, I understand your anger. What they did to you was unconscionable. But this path you're on, it's going to destroy you too. Maybe. Or maybe it's going to teach some people that actions have consequences. The legal system will handle that. Brett and Jessa are facing serious charges. They'll be punished. The legal system handles crimes. It doesn't handle betrayal. It doesn't handle 22 years of lies and manipulation. James studied me for a long moment. You're not the same man who walked into that conference room 3 weeks ago. No, I'm not. That man was naive, trusting. He believed in fairness and justice and the basic decency of people he loved. And now? Now I believe in evidence and consequences and making sure that people who hurt others don't get to walk away clean. I left his office knowing that I'd crossed a line. The old Nick Grady would have accepted the legal victory and moved on with his life. But the old Nick Grady had been a fool, blind to the predators circling his marriage and his assets. The new Nick Grady was done being anyone's victim. That evening, I sat in my study, planning the next phase. Jessa's social media campaign was gaining traction, painting her as a wronged woman driven to desperate measures by an abusive husband. Some people were buying it, especially those who didn't know the full story. Time to change that narrative. I opened my laptop and began typing. Not angry rants or defensive explanations, but a calm, methodical presentation of facts. Bank records, email screenshots, police reports, witness statements, everything documented, verified, and presented with the precision of an engineering report. I uploaded it all to a simple website, thefullstory.com. No commentary, no emotional appeals, just evidence. Let people draw their own conclusions. Within hours, the site was getting thousands of visitors. The story spread through social media like wildfire, shared and reshared by people hungry for truth in a world full of spin. My phone rang constantly. Reporters, friends, strangers offering support or condemnation. I ignored them all. The evidence spoke for itself. By midnight, Jessa's carefully constructed narrative was crumbling. Her supporters were abandoning her as the full scope of her deception became clear. The woman who'd tried to destroy me with lies was being destroyed by truth. It was poetic justice. And I was just getting started. The war was far from over. But for the first time in months, I felt like I was winning. And winning, I discovered, felt better than I'd expected. Much better. 6 months after that anniversary dinner at Romano's, I stood in the courthouse lobby, watching Jessa sign the final divorce papers. She'd aged years in those months. Her carefully maintained appearance had cracked like old paint, revealing the exhaustion and defeat beneath. Brett sat beside her, his own lawyer whispering urgent instructions. His political ambitions had evaporated along with his law career. The pink paint had long since been scrubbed from his house, but the damage to his reputation was permanent. "Mr. Grady?" Detective Morrison approached with a satisfied expression. "Thought you'd want to know? The jury came back this morning, guilty on all counts." The criminal trial had been swift and decisive. Faced with overwhelming evidence, both defendants had tried to blame each other, destroying what remained of their relationship. Brett claimed Jessa had manipulated him. Jessa insisted Brett had coerced her. The jury believed neither. "What's the sentence?" 2 years for her, 3 for him, plus full restitution and community service. Morrison shook my hand. "Your cooperation made all the difference." I nodded, feeling oddly empty. Justice had been served, but it felt hollow somehow, like winning a game that had cost too much to play. "Nick?" A familiar voice made me turn. Carol, my assistant, approached with a concerned smile. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine. Ready for this to be over." "The office isn't the same without you. When are you coming back?" I'd taken extended leave after the media attention became overwhelming. TheFullStory.com had generated national coverage, turning my private revenge into a public spectacle. Talk shows, magazine interviews, book deals, everyone wanted a piece of the story. "I'm not," I said. "I've decided to start my own firm." It was true. The past 6 months had shown me that I was capable of more than I'd ever imagined. Not just engineering projects, but complex strategic thinking, long-term planning, systematic problem-solving applied to human conflicts. "Really? That's wonderful, Nick. You'll do great." Would I? The man who'd walked into Romano's with divorce papers in a jewelry box was gone, replaced by someone harder, more calculating. Someone who understood that trust was a luxury and revenge was sometimes necessary. The divorce proceedings concluded with minimal drama. Jessa got nothing. The prenuptial agreement I'd insisted on 23 years ago had protected most of my assets, and her criminal conviction voided any claim to spousal support. She left the courthouse with her mother, heading back to Florida and an uncertain future. Brett's exit was less dignified. Reporters surrounded him on the courthouse steps, shouting questions about his political career and his relationship with Jessa. His lawyer pushed through the crowd, Brett's bald head shining under the camera lights. I slipped out a side entrance, avoiding the media circus. The story would continue without me. There were already rumors about a television movie and a best-selling book, but I was done being a public figure. Time to rebuild my life on more solid foundations. Bob was waiting by my car, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "So, how does it feel to be a free man?" "Expensive," I said, "but worth it." "Any regrets?" I considered the question seriously. The past 6 months had cost me my marriage, my privacy, and my faith in human nature. But they'd also revealed strengths I didn't know I possessed and freed me from a relationship built on lies. "Just one," I said finally. "I regret not seeing through her sooner." "What's next? Besides the new business, I mean." "I'm thinking about dating again. Carefully. Very carefully." Bob laughed. "Good luck with that. After everything that's happened, you're going to be the most paranoid bachelor in Virginia." He was probably right. Trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. But maybe that wasn't entirely bad. Maybe a little paranoia was healthy in a world full of predators and parasites. We drove to Murphy's Pub for a celebratory dinner. The place was crowded with the usual mix of construction workers, office types, and suburban refugees seeking authenticity in their beer choices. I'd missed the honest atmosphere during my months of legal proceedings and media attention. To new beginnings, Bob said, raising his glass. To solid foundations, I replied. We drank to that, and to friendship that had survived the worst kind of stress test. Bob had stood by me through everything, even when my methods had made him uncomfortable. That kind of loyalty was rare and precious. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the news? Congratulations. You deserved better than her. A friend. It was probably from someone in Jessa's social circle, one of the women who'd watched our marriage implode with fascination and secret relief. The divorce had sent shockwaves through the suburban community, making other wives examine their own relationships more carefully. Fan mail? Bob asked. Something like that. I deleted the message without responding. The last thing I needed was more attention from strangers with opinions about my life. We finished dinner and walked to the parking lot. The October air was crisp, full of the promise of winter. A year ago, I'd been planning anniversary celebrations and believing in forever. Now I was planning a new business and learning to believe in myself. You know, Bob said, I never liked her. Jessa, I mean. You never said anything. What was I supposed to say? Your wife is a manipulative social climber who's probably cheating on you? You wouldn't have believed me. He was right. I'd been so invested in the marriage, so committed to making it work, that I'd ignored obvious warning signs. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the gradual emotional distance. I'd explained it all away as career stress and normal marital evolution. I would have defended her, I admitted, right up until I found that burner phone. What made you search her car? Instinct, finally. She'd been acting different for months, but I kept making excuses. Then one night she came home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. When I asked about it, she had this look, like she was calculating how much truth she could get away with. And that's when you started investigating? That's when I stopped lying to myself. We parted ways in the parking lot, Bob heading home to his own wife and family, me driving to the house that was finally, completely mine. The place felt different now, not just because Jessa was gone, but because I'd changed. The man who'd built this house had been naive, trusting, willing to believe the best of people. The man who lived here now knew better. I poured a glass of scotch and sat in my study, surrounded by the blueprints and models that represented my life's work. Bridges, buildings, foundations designed to last. Structures built on honest materials and sound engineering principles. Tomorrow, I'd start building again. A new company, new projects, maybe eventually a new relationship. But this time, I'd apply the lessons I'd learned. Trust would be earned, not assumed. Verification would accompany faith. And anyone who tried to deceive me would discover that the old Nick Grady, the trusting fool, was gone forever. The new Nick Grady was harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous to those who would betray him. I raised my glass to that thought and drank deeply. Outside, the wind rustled through the maple trees, carrying away the last leaves of autumn. Soon it would be winter, a season of endings and preparations for new growth. I was ready for both. The phone rang one final time. Jessa's number appeared on the screen. She was calling from Florida, probably wanting to have the last word, to explain or justify or manipulate one more time. I let it ring until it stopped. Some conversations were finished, some bridges were meant to be burned, and some foundations, once cracked, could never be repaired. I turned off the lights and headed upstairs, leaving the past behind in the darkness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to build something lasting and true. This time, I'd get it right. This time, I'd see the cracks before they could spread. This time, I'd build on solid ground. The last good day of my marriage was over. The first good day of my new life was about to begin, and I intended to make it count.